Okay, thank you everybody for joining us today. We're here with Zenas Hsu, violinist, who is a violinist at A Far Cry, and Shih Hui Chen, who is a composer, whose piece is being featured today. Thank you for joining me today, Zenas and Shui.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
So really excited to present this program. Zenas, he's a wonderful violinist and also husband to a great friend of mine, Janny Ju, who is actually also going to perform at the concerts. Zenas, I wanted to find out more about the program, your inspiration behind it. How did you get to choose the pieces? And you also were talking about sci-fi, your love for sci-fi and trivia also. So there's a lot in this program. We'd love to hear more about it.
Sure. I mean, quite honestly, this program came out of my holding these pieces in my head for quite some time now. I think around, for some of them, a couple years, and others more recently. But these have been pieces that I've been really enjoying and dying to play. So it's basically a collection of pieces that I really love. Why I put them together is I find that all these 5 pieces have very distinct flavors, have very distinct grammar, have very distinct ways of telling the story that they are. And I just thought that it would be a great combination, kind of, 5 really cool ingredients to put into an amazing dish. I'll be starting with Shih Hui's first piece, Returning Souls. It was composed sort of in tandem with a documentary film that was being filmed in Taiwan at the time for kind of chronicling the journey of the Ami tribe, one of many indigenous tribes in Taiwan. And I think Shih Hui would tell more details, but it retells sort of using musical themes from folk songs that they would sing, retells sort of a kind of a creation myth, I think is what it kind of is. And it's simply amazing music. The second piece will be selections from Interior Design by Steve Mackey. I couldn't fit all 5 movements in there, but it's a 5-movement work. Steve Mackey is and was a rock guitarist who spent a lot of time in Northern California performing in rock bands. But when he was young, he heard the last string quartet of Beethoven, Opus 135, and heard the second movement. And if I'm not very good at singing, but if you know the second movement, it's got this like bum 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 bum, and all of a sudden, right at the beginning, there's this E flat unison from everyone. And according to Mackey, I worked with him in one summer. He said his whole life was changed by hearing that one note. So he went into writing classical music. Interior Design is one of his solo violin pieces that describes 5 elements of architecture, basically. It's also alternatively programmed as a work for 5 violinists who would then play from different corners of a room or hall to kind of highlight the different aspects of architecture. The third piece is Jessie Montgomery's First Rhapsody. I thought it was actually a great time to play this because she actually just released her second Rhapsody. Her first Rhapsody was inspired mostly by Yizai. Her style is very improvisatory. In fact, in her composition, she writes a lot about, timing being very flexible. And I really love playing her works. A Far Cry has played some of her works before. Phoenix, another chamber orchestra that I'm part of, also has played her works. And her, it goes without saying, her being a violinist, her style is honestly very Yizai-ish, very comfortable to play in the hand, but also very challenging and virtuosic. The last piece will be Batsevich's second violin sonata. Matsevich is from a Polish background, and her father's side was Lithuanian. She was one of the few violin virtuosos and performers of her time, women violinists, and equally great in composition. She lived during the 90s. I'm sorry. She lived during the 1900s, or mid 1900s, through the Second World War, and during after the Congress of Warsaw by Germany, by Nazi Germany, she made a lot of secret underground concerts to kind of keep it going. Her style is very out of this world, I find, like very futuristic on the topic of space. She wrote a lot of earlier pieces, kind of traditionally neoclassical, but then went into 12-tone and aleatoric. And so in the second violin sonata, the last couple of minutes of it are all gliss written with basically a tremolo, but repeating notes with the bow. And so it honestly, to me, sounds like a motorcycle or something. I don't know what she was thinking specifically for it, but apart from that, her music is also very virtuosic, coming from a violinist background. So that's the program.
Sounds amazing. I can't wait. Thank you, Zenas. And Shih Hui is here with us. And Shih Hui, I've been an admirer of your work for a long time. My string quartet, the Chiara string quartet, we played your piece a long time ago. And actually, since then, you did Fulbright in 2010 in Taiwan. And I would love to, and this piece is from the inspirations of your trip. And I would love to find out what that trip was like for you to spend a year there and to really study and research the folk music of Aboriginal tribes there. So I'd love to hear more about that.
So my trip to Taiwan was really amazing because I came to the States, that it was 82. And then, I learned, I'm a Western trained composer, and I don't know much about Asian music, even though I speak the language and I did my really important part of my life in Taiwan. But having been here for 20 years, I just feel like I need to know more on my own culture and my background. So I received a Fulbright scholar, and I went back to Taiwan to study specifically at my host institution is academic at Seneca. And so it's not a music only, actually it's a science, a humanity, an institute, a think tank. So there I got a lot of a chance to study the Taiwanese culture and in particular in the anthropology in department. So while I was there, I met this filmmaker and anthropologist, Shih Hui Chen, and she was doing this amazing documentary film. And then she asked me, would you want to join us to make this film? And I was like, wow, this is amazing. I told her, I don't know very much of the indigenous people's music, and I'm just beginning. But she convinced me that to compose compose music for the 3 stories, and I think that's really amazing that for a filmmaker. Usually, a lot of filmmakers not interested in making music important, but she is specifically wanting a composer to compose music for these stories, and sort of she felt like differentiating with the indigenous people's music because they're in their life, they sing and dance, everything, But when it comes to these 3 specific stories, and it seems to take people away from the sound world, the reality, and so with the instrumental and sort of a sort of more modern-ish Western music approach really differentiated what your daily life indigenous people's music. So I feel like I learned a lot because before I went there, a lot of my studies is sort of indirect. I listen to I listen to a recording, or I listen to read a book, you know. But once you get there, you have a first hand of understanding what is like, and that's what I feel I learned so much about it. So these stories, though, I think some of you might have. I am gonna check out the subtitles, and actually, this is the very few pieces. Most of my music are abstract music. And these pieces are actually programmatic, and they have subtitles. And so it's important for the audience to know what these titles about. So basically, like the one story is about glowing maiden, it symbolizes the sun. And then gray flood, right? And that's like water, that's disaster. And then descending shaman, which, you know, they don't have a doctor at the time, and those, you know, legends. The shaman is the one providing them the health, well-being, and everything. And then headhunting, which is pretty gruesome, but on the other hand, it's interesting. Headhunting was the father telling the kids to find the sources, and then by accident the kids kill the father, right? And so that's kind of, it's interesting. Like in order to grow up, you have to sort of cut through your past, and that's like a really interesting story in the indigenous people. And then they become ascending stars, right? So all these, it's all that part of nature I feel very fascinating, because the first people, the nature is part of their life, or their life is full of the part of nature. It's nature, which is very different from us right now. You know, modern days, we're now talking about environmental conscious and this, you know, like, but originally we are the people when we are, I'm sure even in Western, the nature is always part of us, and we are away from it so long. And so to relearn that from these legends was very inspiring for me.
It's wonderful. I can't wait to listen to the piece and hear more stories about it. It's really amazing to hear you talk about this. And I was just thinking also, I'm a Korean American violinist, and I always grew up listening to Korean folk music from my father. Actually, my father really loves Korean folk music, but I never got a chance to study it as I, you know, went to conservatories and music schools, right, where I learned Western violin. And I also took a trip to Korea to, you know, learn more about Korean folk music, and kind of looking for more ways to kind of you know, engage with my culture creatively, right? And for me, I've been so much more happier and feeling more whole, I guess, as a musician, as a creative. And I think you know, and Zenas, and you know, you're a Taiwanese American violinist also, and I think for you to just be in dialogue and to work with Shih Hui and with the folk stories of Taiwan, I think it's like a really special experience and special moment.